Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with InsideTheU. Just wrapped up the Miami spring game. Practice number 15 is in the books. Look, it was a little bit different today. First off, great seeing as many alumni out here, former Hurricanes, guys that just graduated, Ruben Bain, Francis Maui-Noah, Keem Mesidor, they were all out here. Saw some other guys, Will Mallory, Jonathan Vilma was out here. So just a number of guys were out here, David Njoku, great to see. So a good environment here. About 5,500 people were here at Cobb Stadium. I thought they did a good job. They put the bleachers in a little bit closer this year, so fans were closer to the field. And the format was, they did do some drills, some one-on-ones. I'll post those videos. I know you'll be excited to see some of the one-on-one stuff there. Did some drills, did some team drills, some situational stuff, and then they got into this full team, essentially a spring game. It wasn't split up with, an orange and green or orange and white or anything like that, but they did, first team guys were out there and first team defense. It was a good opportunity to see Darian Mensah out here. Threw 3 touchdown passes. I haven't had time, and what I'll do is I'll go back through the video and I'll go through the full statistics with Mensah and everybody else. But Mensah did throw 3 touchdown passes, a 29-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Barkate, 33-yarder to Dalen Upshaw, and then a 5-yarder right in the red zone there, 5-yard touchdown to Cam Vaughn. So he did throw some touchdown passes, and I'll get into some more about Darian. But overall, I thought it was pretty good. I thought they wanted to go to the run game a little bit. Malachi Toney, Mark Fletcher did not do the spring game portion. They did do some drills earlier. And then some other guys were just held out completely. Ahmad Moten's missed the entire spring. Mohamed Toure, another guy, that wasn't out here. Gerard Pringle Jr. missed, the back end there, the back half of spring ball with an injury. Those two, him and Moten, were in boots today. So hopefully those guys can get back. But they wanted to go to the run game. You got to see a good look at Javian Mallory, him out here. And I thought he had some good runs. I thought Jordan Lyle really showed that footwork, that elusive ability that we've seen flashes of. We didn't see it very much last year, but he's certainly trying to get back to where he was a couple years ago, or really going into last year. If you guys remember, he did start last year's opener. So I thought it was good to see some flashes out of him today, some good runs. Now, all the running backs, none of the running backs had any crazy 20, they didn't rip off any long runs, but I thought in spurts there, I thought Lyle did a good job showing his moves again, and whether it was through the perimeter and kind of making guys miss, but just you saw the ability, and I think that was an encouraging sign from him in particular. Like I said, Mallory got some reps, and Mark and Gerard weren't out here, so just those guys did a pretty good job. And then going back to the passing game with Mensah, all spring I've talked about this quick passing game, and look, Darian spoke with reporters. I was able to be a part of it. He spoke with reporters, a sit-down interview with him, with other writers yesterday, which was great. And I already posted a couple articles from that interview. But, I touched on it there, and then as well as throughout the spring about this quick passing game. And he said, look, it's going to be a big part of what they do, what they want to do as an offense. And he's saying this offense kind of reminds him a little bit of some of the stuff he did at Tulane, some play action stuff. Did see that today. At least one of the long touchdown passes was on a direct play action pass, got one-on-one coverage down the field, throwing the ball into the end zone. Both touchdowns were to the right, actually right down this sideline behind me, all the way down the field, the touchdown passes there. And those guys, Cooper and Dalen both won their one-on-one matchups. That's something that Mario Cristobal talked about. He wanted to see today, and he saw it from those wide receivers. But again, touching a lot on the quick passing game from Darian, but today, and this is something that I think that he has shown at Duke, at Tulane, and throughout spring practice. I just haven't talked about it as much, but I do think he's got that ability to throw the ball downfield. I think you'll see that. I think not just those guys, but once they get Malachi Toney, down the field as well. Again, not being out here for spring game, but he did do the one-on-ones, look good there. But certainly has the opportunity, Malachi and all these other guys, the ball to get down the field. And I think Darian, with his throwing ability, has good accuracy, seems to have a good touch throwing the ball down the field. And those numbers show, those Pro Football Focus numbers reflect that, his ability to find the ball, find catches down the field. So that's exciting. It's not just going to be this quick passing game, but I do mention that I still think it's going to be a strong point. As he mentioned, it's going to be a strong point with this offense. Just really good seeing down the field. As far as the tight ends go, I'm just, once again, just not expecting much from this group. Didn't expect much last year. You saw how that played out. Not expecting much again this year. But we'll see. Certainly, you can have a good offense without good tight ends. especially if you got the wide receivers and a number of guys out there. But just didn't see much from the tight ends today either. Before I get into some big picture things, kind of recapping the spring, my thoughts on where this team is and some keys moving forward, do want to kind of stay with the defense here with the spring game. I thought they did a good job as a group, particularly that front seven, did a good job swarming the ball, getting to the running backs, again, not letting some big runs leak out to the perimeter. They did a good job there. And then for the most part, I thought the defensive backs did a good job of kind of preventing some things. Like I said, lost some matchups on those touchdowns. You don't want to do that. Giving up 30-yard touchdown passes, obviously not what you're looking to do there. But, just in general, you still feel comfortable, you still feel confident in this secondary. Now, will they have this extreme playmaker like Keontae Scott was last year? I don't see that, at this point. Jacoby Thomas, another guy. And I'll have some stuff on Jacoby Thomas next week. I think you guys will be interested in hearing about what he had to say. I had a chance to talk with him recently as well. But, we'll see how these guys go throughout the summer. Defensively, we saw Damon Wilson. He spoke to reporters first time this spring, posted that interview already on the channel. He had a nice sack, got to the backfield, showed some good speed there. Again, key for Damon is to be good against the run. Same way with the rest of the defensive ends. These guys are known for being pass rushers, but they've got to be able to stop the run. That's going to be really important for this year's defense. Being able to stop the run like last year's defense was excellent at. Now, some big picture stuff. And I've been thinking about some of this all spring because I felt like it is a big storyline with this team. And hearing Coach Cristobal mention some of these thoughts, and Kevin Beard also, but it really centers around this team not being complacent. And what that really means and how I'm kind of remembering that, I was here when this, 03 was my first year covering the team. So essentially I remember them coming off the national championship loss in 02, and how things kind of started to go downhill. And I remember a big storyline, a big talking point, even years later, about that era as things started to slip after the national championship and the national title game appearance, was this feeling from guys, from the players, just that essentially once they put on the helmet with the U on it, they were going to be the Hurricanes that these other guys were. And that's not how this works. And it just felt like a lot of guys kind of assumed they were going to be next up. They were going to be the next ones, the next first round draft picks at their positions, like they've been seeing other guys do. And it just didn't work out. I remember, I recently talked to Kyle Wright, and just saying, back then, I remember I thought, back then that things were just going to continue. He's like, yeah, that's what I thought, how it was going to go too. That's what they thought. It just didn't happen for different reasons. But I bring that up I say that to say this because Cristobal has mentioned that. He has mentioned it, he doesn't want guys to be complacent in the sense that they're automatically essentially going to be good or be successful or the players are automatically going to be good players. And Kevin Beard mentioned it as well, some of the similar lines. And, Kevin was a part of it as a player. He was on that 03 team, the 02 team, he and then playing, and then, he was a part of that. And I know he takes, personally, I know he feels bad about some of the things, how he was as a player, and really trying to correct some things that he didn't do as a player that he wants his receivers to do. And he is essentially having that same mindset and really pushing guys. So these guys, and Cristobal too. Cristobal was an assistant coach kind of during those times too when he came back. But they definitely know it. So the point of emphasis is there from the coaching staff, and particularly with those two guys. I think that's really important. I think that's going to be the big challenge for this team for the summer, putting in the work. Coach Cristobal talks about the energy needed to play and practice for this team. And they definitely expect to have high energy in practices. And I think it's going to be important for this team for summer workouts, which will begin very shortly. That'll be really important for this team to really have that sense of urgency, that drive, that essentially having the mindset that they're not guaranteed to have that success. Look, I think it's important to be confident. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. They've got really good pieces across the board. And I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism, obviously, with this team. But I think they still have to have that same hunger to have a successful season. And it's not necessarily about what they're going to do in the playoffs. I think it's important that they really focus on getting to the playoffs. And then they can kind of set it up the way they did last year. But look, Last year's team went 10-2 in the regular season. The goal has to be to do better, to win their first ACC conference title. And I think that desire is going to be really important throughout the summer. I think it'll be important for the leaders. Mark Fletcher, Malachi Toney, these are two leaders now. Mark has always been, but these would be guys that be counted on. Some of the defensive backs back again. How will they step up? Darian Mensah taking control of this team. It's his team now. And I know when I asked him about some leadership things, it sounds like he's trying to not step on toes and kind of lead with his actions. I think it's very important for leaders to also lead with their words and really drive things home. So we'll see how that process goes throughout the summer and into fall camp. And Coach Cristobal mentioned it the other day, just as the season comes up quick, so that game at Stanford will be big. But look, I just think that having that right mindset will be the big challenge there. They've got to get some guys back healthy. That'll be important. But just they can't have the assumption that they're going to be good because they have good players. They had good players before, and it didn't work out when I talked about those teams coming off those national championships. I know it was a long time ago, and I understand that. And certainly they've had 2 successful seasons, but they have the opportunity to build on it. That's what good programs do. They build on it. That's what we've seen at Miami. They've been able to build on their success. So that is going to wrap everything up for me. As you can probably hear, it's a little bit loud because the grounds crew is trying to do a great job of cleaning this up, kind of getting the stadium back to what it was. But I really appreciate everybody watching this video, all the videos throughout spring practices. Looking forward to continuing it and continue to pump out videos. Thank you again for all of you for the positive comments and for subscribing. Hitting that mark was huge. Look forward to covering this team, still talking about them throughout the summer. I don't have to wait till fall camp. So looking forward to that. It has been great. I want to leave with this. It's been great seeing how excited everybody is about this team with where they are and the successful season that they had last year. It just feels like there's a carryover momentum from that, the interest in this team. So looking forward to providing as much content as possible on this. So thanks again. Have a good rest of the day and take care.